You got like $200 million, $1 billion and won the lottery, and you're like, I don't want to buy an NBA team. Who do you call, Jeremy? Like,
yeah, exactly. Who do you call, right? Like, obviously, I would call Jordan because I'm from North Carolina, but I don't want to take his spot. We can't just have musical chairs with the Hornets, right? We just can't have that.
Welcome to Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. I'm Paul.
I'm Jeremy.
We look at sports from all angles.
What's really going on?
Beyond Sports.
So today we want to talk a little bit about a story that has been in the news a little bit. Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez and their desire to own a Major League Baseball team. They put in a bid for the New York Mets, and apparently that's A-Rod's childhood team. So I guess that's why it's close to his heart that he wants to make that bid. So from an ESPN story, I think this is, it says that A-Rod and J-Lo put up $300 million of their own money toward the bid. And they've had other investors, including Joe Thomas, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, Bradley Beal, and Mason Plumlee. And then Travis Kelce is also involved in that. And I remember him having an extensive quote about that and how it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And this would be kind of a cool opportunity because it would really increase the diversity in terms of ownership in Major League Baseball, but also in the major sports in America. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about the ownership situation in terms of ethnic minorities being owners and how this bid is kind of reflective of the diversity issue and maybe how that can be changed, maybe what are the factors that go into owning a team and why it's kind of a boys club right now.
Cool. So yeah, I think when we talk about ownership just in general, like, why do you think there needs to be diversity within ownership? Like, why does it even matter? Like, why is this topic even something that we're discussing?
I think it's kind of interesting. I was reading a little bit, doing the research about this, and something that I thought that kind of caught my eye, which was, it just kind of made me perk up, was the idea that, let's say you have a coach, Avery Johnson, even.
Right.
Avery Johnson got his team to the finals, Dallas in 2006 versus the Heat. And they were up 2-0 and then they lost the series, right?
Uh-huh.
Had Avery Johnson won that, he'd be a finals NBA champion, right? You can't take that away from him. That would make him among the elite of coaches today. Instead, when they lost that series, he, in a few years, doesn't repeat that success and gets fired. Then he ends up coaching at Alabama in the college ranks.
Cool.
But let's say there's a black owner that took kind of a shine to Avery Johnson. He liked Avery Johnson and he wanted him as his coach personally. They knew each other, they liked each other, whatever. Don't you think that his career would be a lot different? Because I'm sure he enjoys coaching at college, but I feel like Avery Johnson is kind of a professional coach. I feel like that's kind of where he really belongs. And it's not just that specific case, but just the thought in general that when you have representation that's like you, and most of our major sports, at least basketball and football, are majority black. If we have more ownership that reflects the players, then it actually changes kind of how personnel moves around. It gives those black coaches now that only really get one shot. Maybe they get another shot. Maybe we get more GMs that are black or even other ethnic minorities. So I think that having an ownership that is a little bit more reflective of the players helps the entire sport. Now we have owners who've risen through the ranks, like Michael Jordan, the only one that used to be a player that owns a team, right? So like once you get that and they rise through the ranks, they know the sport, they know the players, and they can give other people opportunities in a different way than the people who own the teams now.
Yeah.
I just think it's important that you have those types of systems in place that people can actually go through a certain process and end up on top of the sport as some of the people who really can make change and are the power players in those sports.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And it's kind of a weird narrative in the sense where it could be like, oh yeah, well, there could be like a majority owner, like, or not a majority owner in this sense, but like a Caucasian American owner of a team, and he could like Avery Johnson and give him a chance, right? But what is the contrast? Well, one of the things that I heard that kind of like goes along the same lines, totally different industry, but I think that it applies here. They found out that a lot of times individuals who shared similarities, especially with nationality, to their doctors, actually were more healthy because they were more likely to take their doctor's advice, right? Something that like kind of like threw me off. I was like, wow, really? Like that's interesting, right? But it's kind of like, how comfortable are we associating with others that don't look like us? Whether it's something that we notice or something that we don't notice, right? Like I bet a lot of those people that were in the study didn't even realize that by changing doctors, like it made them a little bit healthier. It shouldn't necessarily be that way, but that's how it's been recently. And I feel like that's kind of like one of the points that you're making with these sports, right? And I feel like in addition to just minority or just like African Americans or whatever, right? Like that minority ownership, it opens up the same thing that diversity always opens up. It opens up this different type of viewpoint, right? A different way to kind of go about things. You can see things differently. You can add a lot more insight. It's not necessarily just diversity in skin complexion, right? It's diversity in experience, diversity in thoughts. And all of these things come when you start to add more minority owners to your team. And I think that that's one of the valuable things, right? When you're talking about marketing or when you're talking about players or relationship building, right? We saw in a quick point, right, to kind of like bring that home, we saw what type of effect that could have on a lot of different situations, not necessarily ownership, but leadership. When the Lakers had Magic Johnson, right, people were like, oh, the Lakers have Magic. And he was able to sway some of the players towards the Lakers, right, because he was able to build that type of relationship. And that's a situation where you can say, hey, look, you have a management or someone that's in management that is able to relate to these players because of experiences, because he knows what these players are looking for. And that turned out to be a gold mine for the Lakers, if you ask me about what they were actually able to bring about. So I think that same type of approach could be useful in Major League Baseball as well.
Yeah, and the interesting part about Major League Baseball is that although it is majority white, the second highest population percentage is Hispanic. And of course, A-Rod, J-Lo being Hispanic themselves, I think would bring a lot of interest to the sport just from that viewpoint. And the weird thing about their group, though, to be honest, it's a lot of people who are players. And it actually reminds me of the Miami Dolphins situation back in, I don't know if it was 10 years ago.
Okay.
So their sport, like I just named that, their ownership group or their potential ownership group has ex-athletes and current athletes. Mm-hmm. And when you think about how much a team is valued at, their bid for the Mets was $1.7 billion, I think, into which I think they total put $300 million into. So we're talking about $1.7 billion. The bid that was higher than theirs was $2 billion. And the current owner said he would sell to the A-Rod group as long as the bid was close. But we're talking about a team that, you know, I mean, the Mets actually, they made the World Series a few years ago, 2015 maybe. And so they've not been terrible. But like historically, they've always been like the little brother in New York to the Mets or to the Yankees.
Yankees, yeah.
So while they're a valuable team in terms of how much it costs to pay for them, maybe people see this as kind of a sleeping giant. Like once you invigorate that fan base and that franchise, maybe they really can start, you know, to awaken and be very valuable. But we're talking about a $2 billion bid or 1.7 for them for a team that's not necessarily that great historically. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where the issue comes. Athletes today, they are rich Americans. They are definitely rich. Mm-hmm. But the people that own teams currently are on a different level.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say right now you got a group full of 20 people. Each one of those people is still not going to be able to put up $50 million. Like Travis Kelce, I doubt he's going to be able to put up $50 million. Or Joe Thomas, I doubt he's going to be able to put up $50 million. Like nobody wants to put their entire worth into trying to buy that team. You want to have something left over. You want to be able to have some money and flexibility.
They're like, I don't have much, but I own the Mets.
Right. You pull out your wallet, you reach, you see your last $50 million, you hand it over. That's all you got. That's all you got is the Mets to your name. So like that's I think one of the issues. These teams are so expensive, and it's not because they draw in money. It's the potential that they have. It's the valuation of them that's so high because of what they could bring in. But these players aren't able to actually pay for the money, pay for the team. They just don't have that money.
Yeah.
The people that are paying for these teams now, these people are worth billions. These people are worth tens of billions. And so they're putting a sizable amount of their net worth into a team, but it's less. It's 20% maybe. It's not 90%. It's not mortgaging your entire self in order to pay for that team.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I just thought that when you said that, it really put a picture in my head that there's not that many people that can just flat out buy a sports team that's like in the NBA or like the NFL or MLB, right? Like there's not that many people that can just do it and be comfortable. And I feel like when we talk about this and we talk about the sports leagues and why can't they buy that? Well, the value of this league jumped tremendously, right? And that is very crazy. When you're talking about when the NFL first started and people, well, not even just when it first started, but even like in the 70s and the 60s or whatever, people had full-time jobs and they're playing in the NFL, right? This was something that was addition to it. Going from that to 60 years later, and now it's like a multi-billion dollar industry, and you have to like have billions just to buy or purchase a team. Like that's pretty crazy, you know? And I do think that one of the points that you were making is how business is going to take place in the future. We're not going to have these big, rich guys wanting to buy sports teams as often, right? They'll put up some of their money, but I feel like the fueling force behind it is going to be a lot of smaller people that have money that want to come in and do this. And a lot of those people are going to be people that see the value in these sports from entertainment standpoint, as well as from financial standpoint. And I feel like a lot of those people are going to be entertainers. They're going to be athletes that have made money and are trying to invest. And I feel like that's going to be the big swing that we start to see in the future. So it's interesting that we're seeing more and more of this happen, whether it's like the MLB, like MLS, like we talked about in our previous conversation, right? Or the MLB. You also had Derek Jeter with was the Marlins or whatever, right? There's a lot of stuff that's going on, and I feel like that trend that we're seeing right now is going to continue to happen. And I think that it's a good thing, right? Kind of similar to the point that you were making earlier in today's conversation.
Yeah, and speaking of Jeter, I was just looking up Jeter right now, actually. And what I got about Jeter was when he bought the team anyway, I don't know how the situation's changed since, but he bought a 4% stake in the franchise, right? 4%, which is like, if it's worth $1 billion, that's what, $40 million that he would have had to invest in order to be 4%, right? So that's, that's a lot of money, but it's not very much compared to the entire value of that franchise. But Derek Jeter has been the number one guy that's been put forward, right? Mm-hmm. He's the CEO of the team, and he's been put forward as kind of the figurehead of the team. And I think that's kind of an interesting way to do things. It's just like when Jordan was with the Wizards, and he was like, making personnel decisions and all that. But it was kind of like, this is Michael Jordan. We got Jordan, right? Yeah. So when he's a part of your group, you use him in order to bring people to the stadium. And especially when Jordan came out of retirement to play again. Oh, yeah. You use him as a way to kind of bring people. But are you really looking to use his talents? Or are you just looking to use his marketability? So for Jeter, I don't know, they've been doing a lot of interesting things. They've been trying to cut salary like crazy, it seems like, the Marlins. And same thing when Jordan was with the Wizards, and even now
Jordan's
with
always
the Hornets.
Jordan's salary.
He's always right. Like, so we got that monetary issue again. If you don't have the money and you're constantly, like, the Hornets have never paid luxury tax, I read. They're one of two teams that's never paid luxury tax. They're not trying to pay more money than they have to pay. And it shows, right? Like the franchise is not good, and you got to put the money up. You got to pick the right players, but you got to pay the right players, right? You can't get a good player like Kemba Walker and just let him go because you don't want to max him out or whatever, right? If you want to invest in your team, then you got to eventually pay. So, like, I think that's another thing is these players, if they don't have that type of money, right? If they're not hedge fund managers, then these are the guys that are buying teams now. It's not athletes. It's not people that are necessarily involved in sports. It's ex-CEOs of Microsoft. It's hedge fund managers. It's people with crazy amounts of money that can get in because they can do it. And then they don't have to worry about making a profit. They can then spend the money that is necessary to make the team good. So that's kind of, using these players as kind of figureheads to draw interest, I think is kind of a strange issue. And those guys, the players aren't the ones who are really controlling things and really owning the team. That 4% share is not very much. And like I said, I did bring up the Dolphins real quick. The Dolphins, because at some point the Dolphins did have J-Lo and Mark Anthony, right? They had Venus Williams, I know. And I wrote down a couple of the people who were actually on that little ownership group. Oh, yeah, here it is. Jimmy Buffett, Fergie, Venus and Serena Williams, Gloria and Emilio Estefan. So a lot of famous people that are bringing people to the stadium. But at that time, when all those people were owning the team, Stephen Ross still owned like 95% of the team. So these people aren't really owning the team. They're kind of used to bring interest. It's a smart move. It's a smart move on the principal owner. Mm-hmm. But these, they're not really owning a team. They're not owning a team any more than a person who buys stock in Microsoft is owning Microsoft in a sense.
Yeah.
So like
just Microsoft doesn't leverage Joe from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah. He's our new owner. Come out and buy Windows, whatever. So I think that's kind of an issue too, in that not only are they not able to really put the money up, they're still being kind of exploited in a sense, in some ways, in order to draw interest, So there probably has to be a better way for them. And so I guess in a way, the J-Lo A-Rod thing is trying to bring the players and give them their own team. So that way, even if they are being kind of used as a marketing ploy, they at least own the team. It's their thing, and it's not some other entity above them.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting point, right? Like when you're talking about exploitation in just the U.S. and stuff, right? Like I feel that, especially since we're in this like capitalistic like economy, right? There's always that type of like relationship until it's been able to be broke, right? Even with college athletes, or when we had our conversation about Christian Dawkins, right? He was like, oh yeah, he's like, we can make a lot of money off of these kids, right? I feel like that's that same type of mindset that we just have at this time and even in the past, right? And I feel that he, at that point, is like, you know what? I'm going to use them because they're going to get used no matter what. And I'm going to make money, but I'm going to show them how to make money in the future as well. I think that that's a different type of comparison with this one in the ownership, just because, like you said, I feel like they're using them as a figurehead to lead their overall brand, right? They are the front. They are the front-focusing person. That's who all the attention's going towards. And we've seen this play out so many times. There's not a lot of people that have that money to purchase them, and they're people like Jeter. And I feel like to make Jeter's impact even more, since you know that he's not that much of an owner, you try to make him as relevant as possible, because then it becomes Derek Jeter's team. And now people look at it like, oh, I like Derek Jeter, and now I can be a Marlins fan, right? So now he's bringing in fan base as well. And I feel like that's the same thing that they're looking for with A-Rod and J-Lo, is that, hey, we know that they're going to be part owners. They live in New York, right? I imagine they still live in New York, right? I think that the comparison between them with the Mets and our previous conversation when we're talking about all these guys in MLS, like, what's going to be their impact? Is it going to bring something new to the game? Is it going to bring entertainment? Well, the MLS is a little bit different because they're two totally different types of situations. I feel like baseball is one of those games where you bring and your celebrity friends. You do sit in the boxes. You are seen at every single game. And I feel like that's going to be something that can definitely build a fan base and help out with the company. So I think that's interesting because we're talking about it related to sports. But later I might try to wrap it into some other concepts where athletes are used in similar type of ways as well.
All right. Well, I'm interested to see how that works. See what you do with that.
All right.
Another part that I think you almost hit on, but you kind of went around a little bit, is kind of liability in a sense. If you listen to the Le Batard show, every time they talk about the stuff that the Marlins are doing, they're calling out Derek Jeter specifically, right? They're blaming Derek Jeter for the crap that goes on with the Marlins. And again, he's a 4% owner. I don't care if he's a CEO. He's a 4% owner. He's not allowed. There's no way. I don't know. There's no way he could be making all the decisions for an ownership group that is 96% not him. You know what I'm saying? Like how would that be able to happen? It wouldn't make sense. So for him to get blamed for everything, I think it's just a good way to shield themselves. It's not only using him to bring people in, but it's also shielding themselves from the blame that whoever else owns the team. I don't even know who owns the team other than him. That's the thing, right? It's a group that was assembled that used Derek Jeter to get the bid. And then you also have, again, bringing up Jordan again, when the Wizards were bad, they had an internal fighting and they blamed Jordan basically. And
bad. No,
I mean, the time that they were bad and he was there.
Yeah.
For that time, it was because of Jordan. It was because of his decisions, and he was clashing with the players because he was on the team, and I guess he wasn't motivating people right because that's how he normally does. Mm-hmm. And so he was getting blamed for that too, right? It wasn't the ownership group who have never led a good team. The Wizards Bullets haven't been good since the 70s, right? Like, I don't know if they were decent in the 90s, but it's been a long time since you thought that Washington basketball franchise was a challenger. But we're not going to blame the ownership group. We're going to blame Jordan specifically. And when it comes to now, yes, blame Jordan for the Hornets, whatever's going on. But it's kind of funny how that works when you use that player in order to get the bid, use that player in order to draw excitement and to breed that excitement for the team. And then when things go wrong, you who put up 99% of the money or whatever, you can just duck your head and say, well, that's his fault. That's Derek Jeter's fault for somehow moving the address of the Marlins to like the Cayman Islands or whatever, right? To basically operate the Marlins like a shell company, whatever is going on. Just listen to that stuff, like the old Le Batard stuff about that. Mm-hmm. And they were going off about it. But like they're talking about Derek Jeter as if he was the only one there, you know?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points that you were making, and I like lost my like thought that I had that was like actually kind of interesting. They're putting the responsibility on Derek Jeter, right? Derek Jeter's name gets mentioned. Well, is that a good or a bad thing? And it's kind of interesting as far as like if you're talking about the business owner, right? Because you know how they talk about no publicity is bad publicity is good publicity or whatever. As long as you're staying relevant, as long as you're in the news, that's still adding towards the value of your team, right? I feel like even though they may be having their thing down there in Florida right now with the Marlins, I feel like they're still, outside of the COVID part, making sports kind of like irrelevant for a while and the other things that are going on in this world right now. I feel like the Marlins are still more relevant than they were before, whether it's good or bad. And I feel like that still helps out the team's value. But I do think that it's interesting that Jeter does get the blame for certain things, right? It's like Derek Jeter wants to try this. Derek Jeter wants to try that, right? I mean, he might want to. He might have brought it up, but they're like, you know what, Derek, we're going to let you release it. It's going to be your thing. We're going to put you in control of it. And you just make sure that everything's taken care of. We know you have the baseball mind. But again, for them, what is the situation? It's a business decision, right? It's just a business. It's all about being a business. They understand the ins and outs of the business. They're like, it doesn't really matter what Jeter does unless he's just winning a bunch, unless he wins the World Series. Like, it's only gonna have so much benefit to it, right? But I feel like the business by itself is gonna make money and profit just because it has Jeter on the team. And just because it makes them more relevant, whether that's going to be ticket sales, jersey sales, people attending games. I feel like just having Jeter there is going to boost a lot of those categories no matter what.
It might. That's going to be a weird sound in the audio. It might. But the issue is that he's the one who's getting skewered for everything. Right. And that to me is a problem when you take a player who otherwise probably can't be in that position of ownership, and then you kind of give him that sort of a stain. Because if this doesn't work out, will he be able to move on, even with his good name, or will he have to make other investments, and just do other business? The guy, he's probably doing fine in terms of other investments, but what if he wants to stay in Major League Baseball? And how will this affect his long-term viability as an executive in baseball if he's got that reputation of, having trashed the Marlins? And the Marlins themselves, think about the Marlins. The Marlins won the World Series in 97. They won in 03. They weren't terrible. They were kind of a cyclical, they would make the playoffs only once, and every year they made the playoffs. For those two times, they won the World Series somehow.
Yeah, they're like super hit or very big misses type thing. We're never just, they had Batista, what was it? Who was the dude that was cranking out? Carlos Gomez? No, gosh,
Stanton.
Yeah,
Giancarlo Stanton.
Yeah, they're just cranking home runs, just nothing, and then Jeter was like, "Nah, I'm not trying to pay that dude," right?
And MVP Christian Yelich.
Oh yeah.
That was on the Marlins, right? And then so, but again, you say Jeter. See, you're doing it too. We don't know
what the point, right? Because it's we associate the team with Jeter, right? And that was part of the stance that Jeter came out and said that he wanted to make, whether it was this way or another. But I want to flip your concept and talk about it a different way, right? Jeter, in a sense, also has an opportunity. And I feel like if he does things that end up working out well, then he will get a lot of praise. And people will say, you know what, Derek Jeter is a good owner. He helped this franchise go from here to here. He was the front of this, and he was the one that really made it happen. Because there's so much pressure that's on him right now, right? You typically don't hear the management group being mentioned on a lot of teams when they've been successful, right? And I feel like Jeter has a platform, a base now where he can really take advantage of that, even though it's a tough situation. But I feel like that's the same thing as saying, you know what, we're gonna let this player lead our team, right? Say, okay, well, we have Kobe and Shaq aren't working, or we're going to put it all on Kobe. We're going to let Shaq go, and now you win a championship, right? He has that opportunity to stand up and show his overall value, and then he'll get the credit for it if it happens, but he'll also get the blame for it if it doesn't. And I feel like that's kind of the touchy area right now, right? We want Jeter to be able to not have to take all the blame, but we don't mind if he gets the success from the Marlins doing good, if they end up doing good.
Right, but my point with the whole thing is if Jeter only owns 4% of the team now, whether or not they win or lose, he's still only going to own 4% of the team. But will his reputation be tarnished so that if he decides to move on in another direction, if he wants to own a team and try to get more interest in a team than 4%, will he be able to? Will he have built up his capital? Will he have built up his reputation enough to do that? Because when it comes to buying a team, it takes more than just money. It takes a crap load of money, but it also takes people wanting you to own a team. And there are some people that have tried to buy teams that aren't allowed to buy teams. And there's also been owners who've had to sell their teams for controversial issues.
Yeah.
So you have to have that reputation.
But that's what I'm saying.
But my point earlier too,
he can continue to make that reputation depending on how he does the Marlins, right?
Right. But what I'm saying is, does that need to happen for him? Right? Does the ownership who owns a terrible team but never gets in trouble for it, never gets called to task for it, do they have that same pressure as Derek Jeter would? I don't know. Whoever, right now, Cleveland Browns have been bad, and they've always been bad essentially since the 60s. But no one says, oh, the ownership is terrible. They blame the coach, they blame the quarterback, they blame the general manager. Nobody says sell the team as much. Some people do, sure, but it's not nearly as much. So the ownership group can operate in the shadows, and according to the way that revenue works and revenue sharing, they might still be able to make a profit. They might still be able to leave. And if they do get forced out, like Donald Sterling, they can sell the team for a crap ton more than they bought it for. They can still profit. But can Derek Jeter still profit? Can Derek Jeter still increase his wealth and increase his reputation if the team does poorly? And that's kind of, to me, the issue with being the figurehead for a team without actually owning the team and controlling the team.
But see, I feel like when you're looking at it from that point of view, right, you're looking at it only in one situation where you're saying the only thing that can happen. I know you're not saying it that way, but the only thing that can happen to his reputation is it going in a downward direction. And I'm saying that I feel like he has an opportunity for it to go in the other direction as well and make money no matter if his reputation is better or worse, because I feel like the value of the Marlins is going to continue to increase. And I feel like him being the face of it, no matter if they're winning or losing, is still increasing the value of the team just because he's associated with it. And I don't think that will hurt him overall if he tries to make a bid for another team. If the next team that he would end up going to, if this one didn't work out, if he so decided to do that, I think that third team would probably be like, all right, well, we already see that he's not a good manager. He doesn't increase the value of our league. I think that if you think of everything as a business, then you can kind of see that I don't think Derek Jeter's value is going to go away that much because he just means so much to the game of baseball. Even when he signed as a rookie, they gave him a single-digit number, and they were like, well, why are you giving him a single-digit number, right? It's because the coach was like, I know this guy's going to be special. This is before he even played a game for the Yankees, right? So Jeter is valuable to the game. He's always going to have some value, just like Jordan. If Jordan ended up walking away from the Hornets or whatever and decided 10 years from now, 5 years, he want to come back and there was a team for sale, I'm pretty sure that they would sell it to Jordan.
So what I'm thinking is it's not worst case scenario. It's just more like, how do you protect the person who's in this situation the most? Because always what is the best that can happen? That's good. And there's, great things can always happen. But what happens if he has a plan or wants to execute a plan that people don't have faith in him to be able to execute? Then you have to think, all right, how do you make sure that there's a soft landing? How do you kind of eliminate some of the possibility that things can go wrong? And that's just me. That's how I think about things. I mean, you don't want to feel like the system is built so that people have to fight so hard. Like for Jeter, he has to do extraordinarily well in this capacity for people to give him praise. Whereas there's people who can keep these general manager jobs who've never done well, but can continue to have general manager job just because they've had the experience of being a general manager. You don't want it to be a situation where Jeter gets one CEO position and then because people didn't like how he did, he never gets another chance. And that speaks to, again, what we're talking about is when the upper ranks of a company, upper ranks of an organization are constructed a certain way. That I know Jeter is kind of a made man in baseball, so that's a little bit different. But if people don't sympathize with you and look at you the way that they look at their family members, brothers, sisters, whatever, then maybe they don't give you that second chance. And like you're saying with the people and their doctors, maybe they don't relate, they can't understand it. So it's about how does he succeed the best way. It makes me think of the Cleveland Browns general manager again, Sashi Brown, right? He was going to do the sabermetrics thing. He was going to do the analytics approach. And he didn't get enough chance to try to implement his analytics approach because people got impatient. And then they just went back to a normal type guy who somehow energized the team, but they aren't doing any better. They just got better players. Will people that get a chance once get the second chance after they've tried, or will it just be business as usual again once they get rid of those guys?
I understand the concept with that one. I still think when you're comparing ownership to a GM, right, those are two different concepts. Those are two different things that have to be looked upon separately, right? Because as an owner, you're making these big decisions, right? The majority owner is making the big decisions with the whole team. The GM is making all the decisions within the organization, right? Which way they go forward, all this business development stuff. And the problem is that they're making it seem like Derek Jeter isn't an owner in that sense with the task he's given, but he's more like a GM. And I feel like what the point you're trying to go at is, well, how will Derek Jeter be viewed as a GM in a sense? Like, how is he taking the business part of this situation with the Marlins to the next level, right? And
no, to me, it all wraps up together.
See,
because you can't separate the two.
I think
because to me, as an owner, he has very little clout because of his small equity in the team, and that to me is kind of, he was relegated to being a CEO because his ownership stake is small, and the ownership stake was so that he could become a part of the team. So that it's almost like, hey, do you guys want me as a part of the team? Well, you better give me some ownership. You better give me a little piece, or else I'm not going to come and make your venture profitable. I'm not going to make your venture even viable, right? He validates that venture. He validated the venture. He is Derek Jeter. That's the name. That's the guy that you want associated with your baseball team, because for 10 years he was baseball, and that's a perfect thing to do. So it's all part of the same thing, in my opinion, that he has to be an owner in order for him to be a part of your team. But when he's a part of your team, then do you give him enough respect in order to treat him that way? Or do you send him out to the wolves to be the guy that everyone blames for your organizational mishaps?
So, yeah, I think it's one of those weird situations, right? Like, I feel like the thing is you feeling like it's not fair, right? It's not fair that Derek Jeter has to play this role, right?
Right.
And I say, like, I feel like it's definitely harder in a lot of these situations. I'll say when you're a minority, just in general, it's definitely harder. But I do feel that no matter what situation you're in, this is just like a stock, and people that are entering in sometimes have to take bigger risks than others do. And I feel like when Derek Jeter isn't putting up as much as money, then maybe they're just like, you know what, well, we're just gonna have you take bigger risks. Maybe I don't know, right? But what I do feel though is that I feel like Jeter would have had a chance to get a CEO job if he didn't have ownership in a team, if he really wanted to. I feel that there's enough people that respect Derek Jeter's baseball mind, even as a player, that they would, baseball and business mind, even as a player, that they would be willing to invest in him in that type of realm. I don't feel like, I don't know why this made me think about it, but I don't feel like Jordan was viewed necessarily as a guy that people respected as a CEO type position, right? People felt Jordan was a really good basketball player and they wanted him associated with their team, but I don't think that they necessarily would have wanted Jordan to lead this. And I know this is talking about a long time ago, and maybe my vision got skewed by all the different things that Jordan's done, but I don't feel like people were just over enthusiastic about Jordan being in a leadership personnel type role, especially after some of the moves. But
well, I think early on, I think with Jordan, I think he was trying to own a team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was his goal, was after he retired, to own a team. And when he got on with the Wizards, he was actually part owner, right? He was a minority owner in that team.
Mm-hmm.
And he also asked them to take control of basketball operations.
Yep.
So I think what happened was that in order for him to become a part of the ownership, he requested this. And they knew that having Jordan as a part of their ownership was going to bring people. They knew that he was going to glitz up their team a lot more than what it had been. And it did that, especially when he started playing. They started selling out their games at home and on the road. Like, they were making money off of Jordan. And it was economically profitable for the team, if not for Jordan anyway. So that was definitely part of what was going on. Jordan wanted to be an owner. They allowed him to be a part of the ownership group as long as he could bring people to the stadium and help them make a profit off of this team.
The business side, yeah.
Right. And that was a part of it, because Jordan himself probably couldn't buy a team at that point. And so once he got let go from that situation, he was still looking to buy a team. And then he got on and became a minority owner in the Bobcats at that time. And he was also it says managing member of basketball operations was his title. So again, he was doing personnel. He wasn't technically the GM, because I think on Pro Basketball Reference, if you look up Jordan as a GM, it only has the year and a half or so he was with the Wizards as a GM officially.
Yeah.
And even with the Bobcats, even though he had personnel decisions, I don't think he was listed as GM. So he kind of, he skates for that.
Talent acquisition, something like that.
Yeah, so he kind of skates for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he doesn't really have to take the brunt of those decisions, even though a lot of people do blame him for a lot of personnel decisions that happen. So anyway,
so how do you...
he got in there. He got in there as the minority owner, and I'm pretty sure he might have. I don't know if he did the deal that he could become a majority owner, but either way, Bob Johnson, the owner of the Bobcats at the time, also a black man, founder of BET, he wanted to sell the team, and then Jordan ended up being able to buy the team. So the team was bought for between 175 and 185 million, from what I read. I can't see one definitive number, but it was in the upper 100 millions of dollars, which actually, this was 2010 that he bought it, and that's a really good price for an NBA team.
It was.
So I think the price probably was a little bit negotiated because of Jordan being involved in the team. So I think he might have either he got it for a discount or the team just wasn't worth very much at that time. So I think they still kind of gave him kind of like the Legends discount on the team, I think, because had he been a different person, maybe they would have required him to have more capital.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty low price for a sports franchise in America these days, at least for a major one.
Yeah, he definitely got to deal with that. I think that it's interesting, right? Because what you're talking about or discussing is basically the path that Jeter's on right now, right? Jeter's on an early Michael Jordan path, right? That's the kind of like, in a sense, that's the point that he's at. So Michael Jordan, where he's at right now, right, blossomed in part because of that opportunity he took to try to own the Wizards initially, right? So even though he made, right? We'll talk about Michael Jordan in the sense and say he made them. Even though he made these bad personnel decisions, because that's how everybody looked at it, was that these are Jordan's decisions, he was still able to go on from there and join another franchise, eventually own it outright by itself. And now he can do whatever he wants. Finally, he's given up a little bit of control to kind of like help the team go forward. But at the same time, I don't think that initial experience limited him. And I don't think that this initial experience will limit Jeter if he doesn't do well from having a second time.
Maybe not. But I think that the situation under which Jordan bought the team was a special one, because I don't think that the price that he paid was what the team should have been worth back then, even though it was 10 years ago. Right now, the team is supposedly worth $1.5 billion. So not super expensive, but close to 10 times. No, I'm talking about like expensive compared to other teams. It's the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's maybe like the 6th cheapest team. It's not very valuable compared to other NBA franchises.
Yeah.
Like the Knicks are worth 3 times as much as the Hornets right now. So it's not, to me, it's not an expensive team that's worth a lot in terms of like overall NBA value. So I think he got a little bit of a discount. And when he bought the team, he bought it from a friend who allowed him to join the ownership group. Like after Jordan and the Wizards separated and Jordan was blindsided by it, supposedly, after that happened, they asked Bob Johnson, they're like, hey, would you entertain Jordan being a part of your ownership group? Because Jordan tried to buy the Hornets in the late 90s also. But, something happened. He didn't get to buy the Hornets. That's why he joined the Wizards ownership group.
Yeah.
So when he tried to buy the Hornets, he came back later after Bob Johnson had bought him. And Bob Johnson allowed him to be a part of the ownership group as a friend, I think. He still paid his money, sure. But the owners can do what they want, right? They can sell to or sell equity to whoever they want, right? For the most part. And so, Jordan got in a part of that because of a friend. And okay, now we went from one black owner in the NBA, and we just got another one, and we just switched out, almost like we were talking about black quarterbacks, how we just kind of cycle out. Like it's not like the number somehow stays the same. And Jordan recently, last year, I think, actually sold some equity in the team. He was I don't know what his percentage was in the team before, but it was like 90% or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's.
But he sold it. He's still the majority owner.
Yeah.
You said 97?
Yeah, I think it's like 97.
So he sold a lot of equity to where he's still the majority owner, but he sold a fairly sizable percentage of the team to other investors. And maybe it's because he needed the cash or wanted the cash, because why else would you sell equity in a team like that? So is he doing well in the team? I don't know, but is he just like, does he need money? And he's constantly trying not to pay people. They're trying not to be in the luxury tax. So again, if you have a little bit, if you have almost all the money to buy a team, is it worth buying the team at that point if you can't sustain the team with your money?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful point, especially when you mentioned it early. This kind of comes back to that whole point, right, with buying a team. And I think especially with Michael Jordan, right, like people see Michael or they think of Michael, they're like, we know Michael has money, right? Like Michael got bank, right? Like Michael has money. So that's something that we always know, but owning a team flat out and being responsible for all of those things, like that is your business. Like it's not a group thing, like you are the owner, right? And you have to make sure that you have the money, right, to not only buy the team, but pay the players, run the operations. But in addition, you also need to start branching out and putting valuable minds in ownership positions as well, right? If you're going to have them on your board or do whatever, right? And I feel like maybe that's one of the reasons why Michael Jordan is selling this equity, because he's saying, you know what? Listen, I realize that myself or just me alone is not going to get this team to where they need to go. Like I realize I'm going to have to give up a little bit of my power with respect to leadership. I'm also going to have to give up a little bit of my product so that I can get those minds in here that they can help us basically make our team more profitable. And maybe that was an incentive that he used to try to get these people to come and like work with the team and only be working with that team. So I could see that potentially being something. But I do feel that the thing that we're talking about with Jordan and his path is really important to this initial conversation, right? With these minority owners and kind of saying, well, what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you're hoping for with this relationship? Are you just hoping to make an additional income or additional finances from this investment? Or are you trying to be a part of the team? And if you are a part of the team, then you should definitely look at these stories that we've seen so far, whether it be Michael Jordan, whether it be Derek Jeter. Like, take these as a learning point, because you need to figure out what your role is with this business or with this team, because that's going to play a pivotal role in your future, or it can play a pivotal role in your future.
Yeah, and talk about minority owners. Nelly was also a part of the ownership group before Jordan. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he was also part of the ownership group.
They kicking. He was wearing Air Force Ones all the time.
Probably. He had 2 pair. Come on now. I think before Jordan bought it, Nelly was part of the ownership group. And then I guess Nelly's part of the team. I guess that's, I guess he was a part of the deal. I'm not sure if he still owns a part of the team or not. But still, we only had, say like Jordan, Bob Johnson, Nelly, those 3 guys, black guys, were a part of the Bobcats, but that might have been it. You know what I mean? And this is basketball. This is a this is the highest percentage, I think, of black athletes in a sport is in basketball, the NBA. So, it would be nice if they were capable of buying more than just one team. And if it was more than just, just that one little centralized location of black ownership. And I know that other team, it's also not just black ownership, minority ownership. Joseph Tsai from the Nets that just bought the Nets in 2019. He invested in 2017 in the Nets. He bought a 49% stake in the Nets for, I guess he bought, maybe it was 1.15 billion or something like that. It was over $1 billion, I think.
Okay.
And he had an option to buy the rest of it. And he did exercise that option. So now he owns the Nets. So, we were talking about Nets ownership. So it's Joseph Tsai, and he's, another ethnic minority. Vivek Ranadive for the Kings, who I'm not sure what his percentage is now. I think he bought 65% of it when he first invested in 2013. He was also a part of, I think, the Warriors ownership group, or at least he was a part of the Warriors organization.
Mm.
And that might be it for basketball there. I think football, you have Shad Khan.
Yeah.
You have Kim Pagula, one of the owners of the Bills. So we have two. Like, one is a full owner, Shad Khan, of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kim Pagula owns, I guess, half of the Bills. And then baseball, Jeter is one of the two minority owners. The other is Arte Moreno, who owns the Angels.
Mm.
So, it's pretty low. I don't know about hockey. I didn't look into that. Soccer there's a lot going on in MLS, and because the way this MLS is structured, right? We talked about that. To call someone an owner is kind of I don't understand how it works, but I know James Harden's invested in MLS. Kevin Durant just invested. Russell Wilson and Sierra are invested in MLS. So we do have more, I think, ownership because it's a little bit easier to get into it price-wise. So, just thinking about the different owners and minority owners in the different sports that we know about, it's tough because it takes a lot of money, and it's not just single entities anymore. It's investors, people who handle large amounts of wealth on a daily basis that are able to buy these teams now as compared to what it used to be. Like a guy like Jerry Jones, who has owned his team since the 90s, has seen his team value grow so much that he would never sell his team, right?
No.
Like, there's just no way that another person's going to own the Cowboys for as long as Jerry Jones and his family can hold on to it. So that's also another barrier. They're super expensive. And now these people are inheriting the teams. They're giving it to other people. So the people that had the money in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they can still keep that wealth in the family through the form of that team ownership. And they don't want to sell unless they're really on hard times,
I think that you always say points early on, and I hear them early on. And then the more that you talk, I'll start thinking about them and picking them apart. And oh, wow, that was really good. Because one of the things that you talked about early that I think needs to be mentioned again is to be an owner of a team, it doesn't just require money. You have to have some type of relationship or importance to the people that are buying it, right? It is a club, right? It's a boys club in most of the parts, right? It doesn't need to be a boys club, right? It needs to expand out. It needs to continue to expand. But the way that it changed was because people that had friends that were athletes, that were minorities, they're all right, cool. We see the value in you coming along. Or, you know what, we're okay with you having a piece of the pie. Before, I feel like that would never happen, right? People weren't comfortable giving certain people pieces of a pie, right? They were just no, it's not happening. So I think that that's another takeaway from this minority ownership that you're talking about, right? Is that as you start having more and more minority owners, right, there's gonna blossom more and more minority owners, right? Just because of the relationships that these individuals have, right? Depending on how much of the team they own or whatever, right? But this relationship's going to start blossoming. And you can see the impact and effect of having minority leadership within a team. And when we're talking about minority leadership, minority ownership, right, we're not necessarily saying that a team has to be led and owned, and every single team has to be led and owned by minorities, right? But we're talking about there needs to be a presence. And that's the thing that's important. If you look at the NFL, you start to see, as you get more and more coaches that were African-Americans, you saw more African-Americans getting leadership positions within the actual team, right? You started seeing more guys that were minorities being able to have opportunities to play quarterback. These are some of the things that end up happening. It's not talking about putting somebody in a position because they're a nationality, right? But giving somebody that has talent an opportunity to show what they have. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that we really want to focus on. Let's make sure that people that have the talents, that have these abilities, are able to be seen for who they are and what they can offer to the table, or what they can bring to the table. And also that they're not cut off after one mistake or after two mistakes, and that they're valued the same as they are, or the same as their colleagues and their counterparts. So
yeah, it would be great if you could if everyone had an equal chance of failing up. That would be great if that happened, but that's just not the way things work. Nope. And so that's the kind of thing that is frustrating. And it's kind of a tongue twister when we talk about, or not a tongue twister, but it's a confusing thought to say minority ownership, because we're not talking about people that own less than 50% of the team, right? So like even when I'm doing my notes, I'm trying to say ethnic minority owners because there are plenty of minority owners, and supposedly the Washington football team's minority owners have been trying to sell for a long, long time, because they're just tired of the organization, I guess, or they want to get out. But our minorities that own teams a lot of the times are minority owners if they're able to anyway, and that's kind of thing that we want to be able to. We hope that increases because, like you said, it's opportunities, and the boys club itself can be a different type of club now. Now that other people are getting chances, because clearly people have friends, and you just want to be able to be a friend of someone. And the chances that you're a friend of an owner that can give you a job, if you're a certain race right now, are a lot higher for a certain race than others. And it would be nice if that were a little bit more spread out, if there were more chances that were given. Because let's be real, things are not meritocracies. Like sports should be, but it's not. Especially when you get to higher levels of organizations. They're not meritocracies, right? You might be good at something, but somebody can still reach out and say, I want you for this job, Like, let's say Ann Arbor here in Ann Arbor, the first coach that people wanted after Brady Hoke left was Jim Harbaugh, right? And the reason they wanted Jim Harbaugh was because he was from here, he went to college here, everything. He earned the job based on his merit, but he got called based on relationships, right? Based on people liking and knowing him. So it's a combination of both. And if you don't know the right people, if the relationships that you have are with people who can't help you, then that's not going to work out. Like, I feel like a lot of the times the people that I know are never in those high positions. And so like, I'm like, oh man, I wish I knew that guy that could help me instead of me being cool with the custodians or whatever, like it's just kind of how it works, right?
Like if you got like $200 million, $1 billion and won the lottery, and you're like, I don't want to buy an NBA team. Who do you call, Jeremy? Like,
exactly. Who do you call, right? Like, obviously, I would call Jordan because I'm from North Carolina, but I don't want to take his spot. We can't just have musical chairs with the Hornets, right? We just can't have that. So, like, who do you call, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So you want to be able to know the right people. You want the people that can help others in those positions, and the only way that can happen is one guy's got to get in. Jeter's got to get a great reputation to where he can help other people. Jordan's got to get that reputation back up so that his people come in. Well, all right, that's a whole different thing. But you got to have the reputation and be able to help people.
Yeah.
Jordan's thing. Jordan keeps getting Carolina guys, and that is, I don't know why. It's so frustrating. The people like in articles I read about his time with Washington, was like they just thought that he was doing too much other stuff, and that Wes Unseld was doing a lot of actual like scouting stuff and planning for the draft, and Jordan was getting final say, but Jordan was doing too much other stuff. He's so busy, he's so involved, and people want his time and attention.
Yeah.
So he can't possibly focus all on the basketball, maybe. So a lot of his guys, like right now, I think Mitch Kupchak is the GM for the Hornets. Mitch Kupchak, he was with the Lakers, so it's not like he doesn't have any qualifications, but he's a Carolina guy. Assistant GM is Buzz Peterson, who I'm pretty sure was Jordan's old roommate. He used to talk about Buzz Peterson.
Yeah, what about Mo Peterson?
Carolina. Say what?
So what do you say about Mo Peterson?
No, yeah, Buzz Peterson, yeah. Jordan's old roommate. I mean, you look at the people that Jordan had on the team. I mean, he had Raymond Felton, he had Sean May, drafted those guys right after they won the national championship. I think, I'm not sure if Hansbrough was on the team at some point, or if he or if he just had, I thought maybe Hansbrough was on the team, but I know one of the Martin brothers, Caleb or Cody, one of them was on the team at some point. You can just look, and
they're both on there.
But they're both on the team.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. They're from North Carolina, went to NC State before going to Nevada.
Yeah,
it's just like, why are there so many? And Devontae Graham from Raleigh, even though because he went to Appalachian State first, I think, then he went to Kansas. Like, it's just so many people that I feel like that he's just got. He had PJ Harrison, who was at UNC. And then was on Charlotte for a little bit before I guess he's out of the league now. I'm not sure what he's doing.
Shooting.
But you just say what?
Said shooting threes somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he ain't gonna stop. He ain't gonna stop. But yeah, just like, I don't know what that is. He's helping people. I will give him that. He is putting people on. but it's all Carolina people. I'm
Put
telling
on
you.
for it.
I need to tell
He
him.
put on
I
for a
think
city.
I think he does. I think that's what I need to say though. Like I get that $200 million in that lottery. Hey, I'm a Tar Heel, man. I'm a Tar Heel. I can show you the papers. What's up? I got receipts.
Every single time they come out, we put on.
I'm saying, say, Jordan, how can I be down? Because I got the money and I got the pedigree. What's up? Let me know.
No, I'll be a water boy. Just pay me like $200,000 a year. I'll be good.
No, I got the money to buy the team. I'm getting ownership. I'm doing like Jeter, except I'll even be the whipping boy. I'll be the whipping boy. That's fine.
I'll be the owner. I'll be the water boy, just chilling on the bench on the side.
Yeah, just as long as you can wear a suit to the game, come through. They put a little thing on you. They be like Jeremy, minority owner. You know, whatever. I wear sunglasses inside, all that good stuff.
See, I think one of the things that you're talking about is interesting as well when you're talking about minority owner, and right, you're talking about majority owner, minority owner, right, and making sure that we keep those separate, right? Because what it really is that you're just an investor. You're just an investor with a name, name significance, right? People recognize or name recognition, right? Like you're just basically an investor with name recognition, and that's all you are at this point for the most part. If you're owning 3%, 4%, right, like you're just a part of it, right? And I feel that that's the difference with Jordan and Jeter, right? Is that they have this name recognition. They are investors, and because they're investors, the people are like, we're going to put you in the visual part of the business, right? And from there, then we'll just see how it goes, right?
Right. And so, and that's my big thing about that Dolphins when I brought up the Dolphins situation, where they had all the famous entertainers from Miami, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And they owned probably less than 5% of the team together. Like these are rich people that are not necessarily even able to own the team. You don't think Venus and Serena Williams want to get more into the ownership business and actually like do something with the team, or that the A-Rod wanted to, right? But he wasn't part of that group. But he wanted to. He wants to. So it's just about, are these people going to be able to get in? Because I'm pretty sure, having Fergie as a part of the owner of the team, like what is that? That's definitely because you want people to come and hope that she does a halftime show, right? You hope that Gloria Estefan, Mark Anthony, J-Lo, Jimmy, but these are actually Fergie. These are actually people that could just do your halftime show for free. That's what it sounds like. It's like, hey, look, we won't even have to pay you, whatever. You own part of the team now. So we ask you to do the halftime show 3 times a year. You got to do it or whatever,
They can negotiate. Like, I feel like that's the thing with negotiation, right? Like they can negotiate certain stuff into like contracts, right? But it's hard to negotiate that with respect to money, right? Like we're going to give you 1% ownership of this company if you perform at halftime this many times. You know what I mean? They could literally do that. It would be a weird contract for ownership investment type thing. You never see like Apple saying, all right, cool. Hey, you can be an investor, but do this. Oh, but you do see is when people invest in businesses, this comes back to that point that I was telling you about earlier. They don't mind using their name recognition to boost the business at times, right? And I thought about this with LeBron James and Blaze Pizza, right? I was watching the little Sports Center Instagram thing the other day, and him walking by, shaking people's heads, talking about like, I don't know. And then people talking about, oh yeah, I know you. You look like that Dwayne Wade guy. You know what I mean? Like, he had no worries about investing in Blaze because he saw it as an opportunity, right? He saw it as an investment. And LeBron, I say this, LeBron is a business mind, right? Just like with Magic, I feel like LeBron is a business mind. I feel like he can do a lot of different types of businesses because he understands the general structure of what he wants to get out of them in the end. And I think that that's really valuable. And I'm just always going to throw this in anytime that it's relevant. I still feel like, especially because of this conversation, especially because of the previous conversations, that players eventually are going to start making their own league, especially with respect to NBA. I think that basketball will be the first one, just because you have so many people that have name recognition, they have facial recognition, and they have money, and they have supporters at all different types of levels. And just seeing the amount that these teams are worth and how hard it is to get ownership, is it valuable enough at this point to just keep investing in other people's products? Or is it time to start investing in your own league, start making your own rules, start to develop the people that are joining your league the right way and making it your own product? I feel that ownership by itself as a minority ownership or as an investor doesn't do enough to satisfy some people, some individuals. And I feel that's probably one of the biggest reasons that drove Michael Jordan to be the majority owner, because he realized that what he wanted to do was bigger than just being an investor. And I feel like a lot more players are going to start to see that when they realize that they're investors and they're not necessarily happy with the way the stuff is going or the amount of voice that they actually have within the league. So again, I feel like it's going to happen. Hopefully it happens sometime within the next 20 years or within my lifetime or something. But I definitely think that it's something to look out for because it makes sense. If you're thinking about a business standpoint, it makes sense. And I think that kind of relates to the conversation we're having right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I was actually going to ask that point. But before I go to that, I want to go back to the LeBron Magic Johnson investment thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have two guys who are so famous that they don't need to use their own money to invest in things. They use their likeness, they use their personality, they use their sphere of influence as a way to cash in on investments, right? You don't have to be the smartest investor to be able to make good investments if you have good people around you helping you,
mm-hmm.
and if you have so much capital that like you can't fail. And if you don't use any of it, you can't fail. So like, let's say Blaze Pizza. I definitely started going to Blaze Pizza because of hearing that LeBron James ate at Blaze Pizza. And, you know, I was like, they don't have the same ingredients that LeBron James supposedly puts on his pizza here, but I still ate it, you know? I couldn't get a chicken wing on my pizza. I was like, where the chicken wings on the pizza at? You know, but I still went, you know, and it's good, but, you know, we stopped eating there. We ate there for a little bit and stopped eating there, so it's fine. But the point is that it grew because of, yes, LeBron James likeness, but I don't think LeBron James had to invest in Blaze Pizza if he didn't want to, but maybe he invested some in it and it's grown, or he just like endorsed it and he got paid for that. Either way, you know, when you're so big that he is, you don't have to put in all your money into an investment. And then going on to the player starting their own league, I thought about it too. And I was thinking, okay, let's say one of the cheaper franchises, let's say it's $500 million to basically own a franchise. And then when the Bobcats came into the league, they had to pay a $300 million expansion fee. So like, yeah, $300 million just flat out for an expansion fee. You have untold hundreds of millions of dollars that go into designing the team, the logo, into staffing the place, into setting up the infrastructure. I don't even know how much that will cost. You need arenas. I don't know if you need to build the arena because everybody wants the public to pay for the arena now. They don't want to pay for it, but you have to have an arena. You have to have all the employees, and there's so much going on that it could be done. But the question is, how much does it cost and who's actually able to pay for it? Because that's the thing that we were talking about. There's a different level between the amount of money that an active player has and that a person who invented the next tech thing that's a billionaire. There's a difference between Steve Ballmer's money and even LeBron James's money right now.
Oh yeah.
Right? And so if you need Steve Ballmer's money to own a team, would you need 10 times Steve Ballmer's money to start a league, to start everything that the NBA has? You think about how much has that investment cost over the years in order to turn the NBA into the NBA? Even the initial investment's got to be so much more than just buying a team where essentially you put the money in and it's plug and play because everything's been established, right? You have to start something. That's tough. I'd love to see it too, because I think that's where it should go. And I think you're completely right that when the players can take over and they can own something for themselves and they have their league, then you're getting the profits, you're getting treated the way you want to, and you're treating the players hopefully the way they want to be treated because you've been there, you know. It's just a whole different thing when you have that grassroots movement. It's really cool, but how do you start? What's the initial investment? Like that type of stuff, it requires a lot of people. It requires 3-4 years worth of investment and planning. And how do you even start that, you know?
Exactly. Like I feel like these are the types of things that there has to be conversation in back rooms. Like, you have to know that some players been like, bro, like, we should just start our own league. I imagine it taking place, but I also imagine that they aren't necessarily speaking on it. Could you imagine if there was like word that got out that LeBron James was thinking about starting his own basketball league? Like, people would start to get frantic, right? Because they don't know what to do, right? Like, that does this mean LeBron James is leaving the NBA, right? Like, who's gonna go with him? So I feel like you're not gonna hear much about anything like that unless it's like really picking up steam.
Well, Kyrie mentioned it when he was talking about not going back. But I think for LeBron, it would be one of those things that he accidentally said on the shop. LeBron would be like, that right there was why I was the greatest player of all time. And I'm starting a new league. Oh, and then he would kind of have to, he would have to catch himself there. You're like, oh, LeBron, why you say that for? Now we got to start all over. I feel like that was slip. That's what happened with that.
Yeah, dude. I think that's interesting. But I looked up a fact while we were talking about that, right? You're talking about LeBron James and Blaze Pizza. So LeBron James purchased, I think, 10% or he owns 10% of Blaze Pizza. I'm not sure if that's what the initial was, but
what was his investment? I'm gonna guess $25 million. What's his investment?
His investment was $1 million, and he's taken away $35 million right now.
Yeah, $1 million. $1 million is what he gives his kids for lunch money. So come on now.
That he could invest $1 million and make 35. And this is the prime example of money makes money, right?
Yeah.
Money makes money. And that's the biggest thing in America, is that people don't realize that money makes money. Even old money in this country still is making a crap ton of money.
No, people realize that. Trust me, people know, because people try to get into the game. People try to get into any sort of money generating venture. You need money, right? Everybody knows that. I don't think that's a secret.
I don't think people know that old money. I don't think that they feel it in their heart that old money is still making money nowadays. Like, money from slave times is still making money nowadays. Like, a lot of money.
No, that's the most valuable money, because that money has been growing for 150 years.
Exactly, right? And that's the point, right? Is that when you're talking about these athletes and starting their own league, and you're talking about money in the U.S. and how is it going to come about? Well, there's so much old money that's here that people aren't going to be able to touch that. They're not going to be able to get to those levels by easy means. It's going to take a lot. But when you have people like LeBron that can take $1 million of these dollars that he's made in his career, invested in a small company, let that grow over the years, right? Then that is huge, right? Because if he can do it with this company, right, there's a lot of other players that see this and they're like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to start marketing. I'm going to start investing in different things. Just like Derek Jeter investing in this, you're going to start seeing younger and younger players. Jeter's old. You're going to start seeing younger and younger players that are investing early on in businesses, right? Like, there's no way that a lot of investors or a lot of players can be like, oh yeah, you know what? I want to invest in Blaze Pizza also, right? Or this would be something that I would be interested in. They throw up $1 million. Maybe it doesn't boom to 25 or 35 million like LeBron's did, right? But maybe it's at 12 million now, right? Because their name recognition might not be as good, but it seems like they probably had a good marketing plan as well. So I think that a lot of younger players right now are really starting to think about that investment, whether it's owning some type of team, whether it's partnering with a lot of these different businesses. Their likeliness is really valuable, right? And this kind of goes back to our conversation with the college players and them being able to market their likeliness, or high school players. Again, this is so valuable, especially for a group of people that hasn't necessarily had the same opportunity as everybody else. So I think that this is a really interesting concept and conversation to have just in general.
Yeah, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed, is how to invest your money. We're not financial advisors. We can't be telling people what to do. But there are people who are skilled at that and who know
invest in Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. There you go. Boom.
Okay, yeah, invest in that. I don't even know what that even means. That's buying you a new mic? Like, what is this?
I need a new mic. I need a subscription. Yeah, I need all that stuff.
I need a new camera. But when you go, look here, I'll say this right now. As far as my philosophy on this, that way it gets out there. I don't want to take money from people. If we get to the point where we're doing ads, that's one thing. You take money from companies. I don't feel right taking money from people. because, you know, I'm a person and you're a person, and you don't want to be asking somebody for $1 a month just for us to talk
Give me a
on, you know what
dollar.
I'm saying?
I need the dollar.
If they chose to give you that money at some point, maybe. But I don't think that that's for me. I wouldn't be asking for that from people. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no.
But
I'm telling LeBron James too, and
oh,
I'm
okay,
not telling people
okay.
to give us $1.
I don't. After what I said about him divulging that stuff on the shop, I don't know, man. I don't know. He could be like, "Look, you gave my plan away." Like, that's gonna be it. That's gonna be it. He's gonna be mad, and he probably won't even let me watch Space Jam 2 after that. Nothing.
He talked about my hairline. He talked about my
I ain't said nothing about the hairline, man. That ain't me. You brought that up.
All right,
Anyway,
I'll take.
but anyway, the investment. People need to learn how to invest. I think it's interesting. One sport that I know, and I talk about, like, randomly talk about bowling, but in bowling, a lot of guys will take their earnings, which they're not the greatest, you know, profiting earning sport. A lot of guys take their earnings and then they just build bowling alleys, you know, bowling centers where they're from, and then that's a sustainable thing that they can pass along to their children, you know. Or, like, I have this pretty cool story. My dad said that his dad was a fisherman and he would go on fishing trips, like, to Louisiana, I guess. And he supposedly, off of the money that he made from one fishing trip, bought all the land that pretty much his kids live on today, which is just crazy to me. Like, that's, you know, land is a great investment because they ain't making no more new land, right? That's what they say. So it's like this stuff like that. Like, if you learn how to, you know, use your money the right way. But again, that's something that I think a lot of people who never had any money, it's hard for them to want to invest when you can just buy that cool new thing that you've always wanted. So for us, I think it's just more like to tell people that you need to learn how to do it. I'm not going to tell anybody how to do it because I don't even know how to do it myself,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah, I feel like investment in general is taking off in the minds of a lot of people because it's becoming a real possibility. And this is going to not necessarily just athletes, but people our age. A lot of my friends, like back in Indiana, so many of my friends have second properties that they're renting out. Like, they have a little bit of money. They're like, you know what? We're going to buy a house. We're going to invest in that house. We're going to rent it out. We're going to sell it. We're going to do this. Like, they realize this income, right, that they can have on the side to pay all their bills or do whatever. Like, that's just a different type of thing that hasn't been the same as what it was before, right? Before, when you were younger, it's like, get you a 401k, get a job that's going to match this, right? And now it's more like, hey, you need to be an owner of things, whether it's houses, whether it's businesses. You need to start investing in these things right now so that you're taken care of in the future. So I feel like that whole general trend is changing. And I'm glad that there's a lot more people investing. Hopefully that changes the face of ownership in this country and makes it more diverse, and we get more interesting, unique, creative combinations of businesses and ideas and thoughts. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And we'll see how it turns out eventually. But I'm excited that these guys are investing, I guess, in professional teams, because I think that it's going to have a bigger impact in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you just made, talking about people, you know, 401k, all that stuff. Like, for me, the way I grew up, I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. 401k, investing, owning land, renting out second property, nothing. I didn't know anything about money growing up. All I knew is you need money to buy stuff, and if you didn't have any money, you're screwed. But I didn't know about having extra money because we didn't have extra money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, I think that's another thing, is that depending on how you grew up and your socioeconomic station in life, you might not have even known. I just think there's so much of a difference between middle class and working class that, like, to compared to a middle class person, or say compared to a working class person, a middle class person is, number one, rich, number two, savvy, right? Like, for me, I had to learn so much, like, just getting into a different level of society in terms of associating with middle class people, that I felt overwhelmed. And I also felt totally not qualified and good enough. It's like imposter syndrome, but in life. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't, it didn't make sense to me. And it's so hard. It's so much of a struggle, because if you're used to not having anything, you actually don't have to deal with those types of issues. If you never had extra money, then you don't have to worry about investing. But then when it comes to you having to learn to invest, you feel inadequate.
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of a societal thing that happens where people who didn't have anything growing up, now they have the money, they have to learn how to do it the right way over people who've had generations of experience who just do this thing as a normal part of their life, and it's not profound. Because once it becomes so normal to you that it's not profound, you can operate in that way. And you can really be a normal person who does super well. Whereas like when you're working class, you have to be exceptional in order to just be like at that same level. The most exceptional, poor, broke, working class person sometimes economically can't even come close to the normal middle class person just because of that generational experience and the institutional kind of knowledge that they get from being at that station for so long. And that's just something that also has to be overcome, right? It's so difficult.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I feel like everything has to have some step forward. And right now we're at that beginning level of taking those steps forward. And the same way that we're talking about these relationships being built now and having opportunities is the same thing that ties us back into our previous conversation, where when you're talking about ownership of these professional teams, right, a lot of it depends on who you know and what opportunities come forth. But even if you don't have those opportunities, like I said, there's so many opportunities out there to invest in. And yeah, like I said, I'm happy to see like all the young people investing right now. Like if you think about NBA owners or MLB owners or NFL owners, who do you think of? It's probably going to be like an older white guy, right? That's typically who you think of, older white guy with money, probably in the tech industry or some type of like, yeah, probably in the tech industry. Like that's kind of like how you view most of the guys now, right? And I feel that narrative is interesting because it's partially changing, right? No matter what league it is, you're having younger people that aren't 50, 60, 70 years old, like investing in these teams. And I feel like that rejuvenates some of the energy for these teams as well, depending on how much these people want to be a part of the organization. But I think it's the same way with, I know when we talked about Michael Jordan a second ago being in management or like leading, people didn't necessarily think that he might have been the business mind, right? Like, let's see what Michael Jordan's going to do. Like, I don't know if Michael Jordan can do this, but I feel like people were excited to know that Michael Jordan was going to be back in basketball or back in DC or back in like Charlotte, you know? So I think that it does come with the positivity. It does give a lot of energy initially. And hopefully, like I said, the investment worked out for Michael Jordan. I don't know how much it was when he sold his shares or the Wizards or when he got let go, whatever. It's a interesting thing. And just to bring home that point with the Michael Jordan deal, because we talked about that a little bit before. During that time, in 2011, Philadelphia 76ers were bought for $280 million. That same year, Detroit Pistons were bought for $325. 2010, the Wizards were bought for $310. The Nets were bought that same year for $200 million, and then Charlotte was bought for $275 million. So Jordan actually paid a little bit more than some of the other people at that time for buying the teams, right? Like the Nets were cheaper, and the 76ers were $5 million more a year later, you know? So it was about.
Okay, but he personally invested less than the total cost, though, I think.
Yeah.
As a part of the ownership.
Yeah, just the overall amount that they were purchased for.
Okay.
But it was just kind of like interesting to see the amounts, right? Like Jordan maybe didn't get as big of a deal as we thought he did for the part that he bought of the Bobcats or whatever, right? But again, owning a team is an expensive thing. I think that's what it keeps coming back to. Owning a team is like an expensive thing. And there's a lot of people that will never have that opportunity to own a team. So
yeah. So if you can, you got to be able to afford a team 10 times over, I think, in order to put in the amount of money necessary to make the team better. I think there's nothing wrong with a group of ex-athletes owning a team. I think it's great. But I think they have to make sure that the money's right. Because I think if the money's right, then you can do whatever you need to make the team better. Right? Like the Yankees. The Yankees are the the number one example of how you can buy a championship in sports, right? When Steinbrenner was putting in crazy money, when the Yankees were constantly paying luxury tax because they were over the salary cap, that was how they were winning. And it made the Yankees a brand, and they seem to be happy with it, right? But this, if you have a group of investors where each of them is investing maybe a tenth of the price of the team, there's no way that you can afford to put that much money into a team year by, and you're just going to be basically going check to check, just trying to make sure you stay afloat, and it's not
Yeah.
going to work. So you got to make sure the money is right, and that's kind of the thing that worries me, is that even if this, say, the Mets ownership group succeeds and they get the bid, how long until they have to sell the team to a person who has more money to be able to keep the team afloat,
That's interesting. One reason why that's interesting, right, is because you're talking about the Yankees buying a championship, right? And then there came out that quote that Derek Jeter was talking about putting a salary cap, but then he said that he never really said salary cap.
A-Rod, right?
My bad, A-Rod. So, A-Rod was talking about putting a salary cap on, and then he said he wasn't really thinking about, he never really mentioned salary cap, right? That's another conversation that we should definitely have. Is the current system in baseball, is it fair? Is it a broken system? Like, what types of things need to be fixed, right? Because we have a lot of different leagues, whether it's the NBA, MLS, NHL, right, that have different types of structures for paying players. Is there one that's the best? What type of things have we saw that's the best? Which ones have increased competitiveness or fair competitiveness in their sports? Because, yeah, you can right now, in a sense, basically buy a baseball team, and you can get caught in the trap of just spending a crap ton of money on your team to try to win and go broke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just try to chop money as much as possible, save, build up money. Maybe that's what the Marlins are trying to do, chop as much money as possible, save, trying to build up money, build these young guys, and then reinvest that money that they saved earlier when they feel their team is ready. Who knows?
I think what the Marlins are trying to do is similar to the Moneyball concept, except I'm not sure if they care as much about winning as they do about just saving money. Because the more money you save, the more money you get to put into your own pockets. And I think that just goes to the economic situations of the owners. Like, we need to make money off of this. We can't just throw away money because we don't have the money to be thrown away. So I think that's kind of an issue. But when you think about it, like baseball recently has been the team that spends the most money wins. You can just look it up. That's just how it goes. But you also see that you can combine that with that Moneyball concept. Like, and that's what the Red Sox did when they had won, they've been winning their recent championships. They spent a bunch of money, but they also try to get people who statistically play baseball the way that they want to in order to ensure winning. Like when the A's started doing the Moneyball thing, the A's could make it to the playoffs. They could win games, but they didn't have the star power at the end. They didn't have the raw talent guys to win. But I think the Red Sox kind of took that concept and they got those guys that could take you over the top. And they kind of mixed both of those philosophies together. So I think when you do that, you take out the salary cap, you get that sort of ability to buy the team that you want to buy, but you still have to be smart about building it and put the best, team and the best people in place to win. So I think that, like you remember John was talking about salary caps being socialist. I wouldn't go that far, but I do like the idea of not having a hard salary cap. Even NBA has luxury tax, right? So they're not like so hard of a cap. They just charge you luxury tax. And I think that's a good way to go because you can have teams that will spend up into that point of luxury tax, like the Warriors. Like the Warriors are right at the point of luxury tax, right? And I don't think they have to pay it yet, but they're close to it. But you have teams that are going to spend the money because they're able to. And you just can't see some teams like keeping having to pick on the Hornets, right? You just can't see the Hornets getting to the point where they spend so much money that they're going to pay in the luxury tax. And that might just be because UNC is not getting the recruits that are worth that kind of money. UNC doesn't have those first round picks that Charlotte can use that they need to pay that type of money. We'll see about Cole Anthony, see where he goes. I mean, let's hope he goes to the Hornets.
It's going to have to rebuild with Duke players. You'll be fine.
Oh, the Duke players, yeah. Gerald Henderson, I forgot he was up there for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Too bad they didn't get Zion, man. If they could have got Zion, they would have got him. You know it.
Oh, man, see, you keep bringing in these thoughts. Like, we're almost done. You start bringing in these thoughts. There was something that I thought earlier. I was like, you know what? What would be really interesting to this conversation? What if Michael Jordan would have been attached to a different team, right? What if it wasn't the Wizards? What if it wasn't the Hornets, right? What if it was
the Bulls?
A totally different team, right? What if it was the Bulls, right? What if it was with the Celtics? What if it was whoever, right? He made a lot of personnel decisions in a sense. I'm going to use him as he, right? We know what we're talking about, right? But he made a lot of personnel decisions, right? With some of the guys that he brought towards the team, right? Or the teams that he was on. Well, some of those are just bad luck, right? Like you can, like Kwame Brown, right? Like, Jordan loves Shaq. You can see it in the documentary, right? Jordan was like, yeah, I'm not no Shaq, right? Like, I can't do that stuff anymore. And he looked at Shaq like, this dude is young and dominating.
Yeah.
Like, I want one of those. Kwame, be that dude.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's kind of like what he wanted, right? Was to have some young, dominant, athletic center that could run the floor like crazy. He looks for Morrison. Well, why did he choose Morrison, right? He felt like he saw something in him. He thought that
Morrison was one of the two best players at the time. You know?
I mean,
he was the two best players in the country.
Right? Like, he was a really good college player. And, like, I think that there was always some types of questions of, like, will his game transfer to the league? And at that time, honestly, like, I felt like he had some traits that could fit in the league, right? But he just wasn't mentally tough. Like, I feel like Morrison wasn't mentally tough to deal with situations where he wasn't the best player on the court.
And he probably wasn't battle tested at Gonzaga. You know what I mean? Like, there's just, you can't, you take it. Every draft pick is going to be a dice roll. It's a gamble. And some turn out well, some don't. You know what I mean? You just can't tell. But you do your best to pick the best player you can at that time.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like there are some situations where you have an idea of how good a player is going to be, right? There's always a range for players that you can choose. And I think that that's the thing that teams need to think about when you're talking about investing in young talent and Jordan in the future or whoever's leading the team, right? You have to have players for all different levels.
What if let's say if you switched them? So Jerry West, the best executive ever in the NBA, right? Like, there's hardly any doubt about that. But Jerry West got in with the Lakers because he played for the Lakers, because he's a Lakers legend. That was his in, as we talked about. You got to know somebody. And even if it's not ownership here, he got in with the Lakers. And I'm not sure what his moves were to end up with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the number 1 pick in the 79 draft. And, like, things just kept going and they just kept turning up for him. He got Shaq to come to LA. But he's also in LA where people seem to want to be all the time, right? He got James Worthy. He got, I mean, the teams that he had, and this is another thing too that we need to go and research to make sure we understood how the stuff happened, because it would take a while. But the one pick I think that you could say, okay, this was real good GMing, was getting Kobe. Because Kobe was raw and had so much potential, and Charlotte didn't want him, basically, right? And he's like, and Jerry West wanted him, and for some reason he's the only one. That one you could see he totally did what a GM could do and spotted some generational talent, right? Whereas other times, maybe he just had better drafts to choose from. Would Jordan have made those same picks? I mean, he definitely would have picked James Worthy, clearly, but would he have made those same picks that that Jerry West made, say? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the thing. I don't know the mechanics of that type of thing. But does Jerry West end up being the best executive ever if he's not with the Lakers? Because he went to Memphis and they had good success. There was more excitement for the Grizzlies when Jerry West was there than there was before or after. Even with the Clippers now that he's working with the Clippers, there's so much excitement. And he's with Golden State when they won. So where the guy goes, championships seem to follow. So maybe it's not just some sort of a fluke, but at the same time, it's probably like karma, because he lost all the championships and they he got him back at the end. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I think Jerry West is really good as far as a basketball mind. I feel like Michael Jordan may not necessarily be the worst basketball mind, but I don't feel like he's at Jerry West status. But I do feel like if he went to a different team, or if there are different picks that came about when he was choosing, as far as like top guys, then he would have did a little bit better. And I also think that sports analytics, first of all, has changed around the game totally. And I'm not sure if it's considered a good thing or a bad thing in that sense. But I do think that you can tell a certain amount about players coming into the league. You can tell which ones have a lot of potential, which ones are mentally there, which ones aren't. At least I can for the most part, right? And which ones are more likely to flame out than others. And it's a big mix, just like when looking at the player. Like there has to be something specific that's unique that you can see, hey, that goes to the next level. Like Devin Mitchell. People were like, okay, Devin Mitchell, he plays really aggressive. It looks like he's playing just like street ball, like
Donovan Mitchell?
Oh, Donovan, yeah.
Okay. I was like, who?
Oh, Donovan Mitchell, right? It seems like he just like street ball, like aggressive, like that's not going to work at the NBA level. He's not going to be able to do that against these guys. And what did he do? He did it against NBA guys, and he continues to do it. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's certain things that you have to be able to look for in players, especially with respect to mental toughness being themselves, and kind of see how they're gonna be throughout their career as well. So,
or anybody who's hiring a GM, you better check Paul out. I'll be his assistant GM who gets the people's names right. That's it. I'm gonna just name check. He's gonna do all the talent evaluation.
Yeah, they can't afford me. That is funny. It's like, yeah, we just signed Devin Mitchell. Nah, Devin. Devin?
You call Patino up asking him. You call Patino up asking him a little bit. Yeah, Devin. So tell me about Devin. What Devin?
Devin Mitchell becomes the richest player in NBA history. Like, who is Devin?
If you put up the draft card, Devin Mitchell, guard, look, and you get nobody that year. you just get no player.
Oh man, yeah. Honestly, like, if I wouldn't have wanted to go to college and do a tough major, maybe I would have tried to like be more associated with sports teams and
definitely. I think I would have. If like you got fired and you want to do something that's not the thing you're doing, then clearly you should have been doing something right. That's how I feel anyway. Like the time that I didn't have work and I was like, when work started again and I was like, I don't want to do work. I want to do what we're doing right now. Then that's a problem. And that just shows, like everything that I did got me to this point, but it would have been nicer to take a more linear path to know, okay, maybe follow really what's a passion and not necessarily an interest. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's totally different. But yeah, I mean, you can do it. Definitely do it. Just I'll name check and we'll be good. Just a team like that. That's how we do.
Yeah, I need to look up all the stuff that I've like posted previous years. Like I've had times where like I told you, I've shut off the draft because my teams have made bad moves and that person just like flamed out or I was excited. I do miss on some though, because I remember with Miles Turner, I was like, he's good. He has potential, but I was like, I just don't see it working out. Like I thought the whole like knee thing was too bad. I didn't think that his defense was that good. And I feel like his defense still isn't that good. The knee thing still exists, but he is something. He can block shots. He can shoot threes, post guys up. He does.
Where did he come from?
He came from Texas.
Okay. Yeah, I remember him, but I don't remember him that well coming out of the draft.
Yeah. He was only there 1 year. He was like the Gatorade National Player of the Year, I think before then, or something like that. Some McDonald's All-American, whatever, something. But yeah, he always had those question marks because he didn't do enough at Texas. And I can't remember who else was in that draft. I have to look it up and see who I wanted us to pick. But yeah, definitely, like I feel like that's the thing. Just not necessarily just finding an interest, but finding something that you want to continue to invest in, right? Or that keeps your creative mind thinking constantly. I feel like that's a valuable thing to have. So
yeah, something that when you wake up, you want to do it, as opposed to you just want to get it over with.
Yeah, it's like, I got to get it over with. I got to get to the lab. I got to get this over with.
Yeah, you don't want to be living for the weekend. Just like, okay, weekend, I can finally not have to work, as opposed to like wanting to work to the point where you don't want to be a workaholic, but it doesn't make you feel bad to focus your time on that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. So, oh, well.
I guess next week, we actually know what we're going to talk about next week. So we're going to talk about the NBA, and we're going to do a little bit of a preview, right? We're going to figure out who we think is going to win and what storylines that we could possibly do. So next week, NBA coming back preview.
But yeah, man, it was another good show. Any other thoughts before we get out of here?
I guess as far as ownership, we would love to see more ethnic minorities in ownership positions because they can then help other people out and put people in positions that we can really grow the type of representation. And it's not just about, having just for the sake of doing it, but like Paul said, people that have different ideas, different ways of doing things, and also just in general growing opportunities for people around them. So I love the idea of that. I hope that the ownership group that is trying to get the Mets understands the serious economic weight that they have, that it's going to be on them if they own this team, because they really have to make sure the money is right. Because you don't want to get in that position and not be able to afford the team. And first thing you do is just shedding money and trying to shed contracts, right? It's not easy. It takes a lot to own teams. So I think, once that happens, I think it's good to have representation. I hope they succeed, and I hope they can learn the ropes quickly and be able to have a functional, profitable team.
I think you put it beautifully. And with that, this is Beyond Sports with Paul and Jeremy. I'm Paul.
I'm Jeremy.
All right, we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.